That's my first time seeing that. She put that together fast, and it looked good. Happy Friday afternoon, everybody. It's a Monday morning for the three of us. We're pre-recording this one for the sake of the holiday season, and you may have noticed we're putting a little bit of a holiday spin on this one. We're welcoming Brian Gillette, who's a longtime favorite of ours, to come on for the spirit of the first follower, turning 5 customers into 50. He's going to tell us a little bit about that philosophy. He's going to tell us about his story and building businesses, of which he's part of the way through another exciting journey. And then he's going to get into more detail about the specifics around that philosophy. But if I didn't already say it, we're pre-recording. Brian, welcome, and hello, everybody.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Thanks for having me. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays.
Yeah.
Happy Q4.
I think there's
I think it's Hanukkah right now as we're recording.
Happy Hanukkah, all.
Do you celebrate Hanukkah, Matt?
Only because it's an excuse for a dinner party.
Okay, because I was going to say I know we've got a wide range of cultures at the table, so I wasn't sure.
Happy Hanukkah.
Yeah, happy Hanukkah, man.
I wish I could celebrate. I mean, I could just celebrate it. I just feel like I need the right crew to introduce me to how to celebrate Hanukkah right. Then I could just do both.
Do you have menorah, Matt?
Yeah, I'm about menorah deep in Judaism, but like the idea of like recounting Exodus is like a little bit beyond my depths. We don't do the storytelling.
Do your kids get excited about the holidays?
We do like solstice and like equinox are like the things I try to focus the kids on to be pretty grounded in like reality. Instead of the abstractions we place on top of it. But that's my agnosticism speaking.
I knew I was going to get an interesting answer. I knew. That's awesome. I like that. What do you do to celebrate the solstices?
It's an excuse for a dinner party, man. That's
all right. Fair enough. Note to self: ask more later. What about you, Brian? Do you do anything fun for the holidays? You going to see family? You like
yeah, it's great. We travel around. I live in LA, so we go to Big Bear, which is like the LA's kind of version of a snowy mountain that's a couple hours away. So we go up there and do a weekend at the lake, and then my family's in the Pacific Northwest, so that's where it's like actually kind of cold. But it's funny how I've been in LA now 10, almost 11 years. Went on a walk last night. It was like 62 degrees. And I'm like, oh, I should have brought a jacket. Like, I'm not the man I was playing baseball in the rain in flip-flops. When you're from the Northwest, everything is always, first of all, it's always freaking raining. Every millisecond of your life, it's raining in the Northwest. And it's always cold. And so your definition of cold changes. You know what I mean? Like in LA, we would we just shut down when it rains, the same rain that like they're still playing baseball in the Northwest, So anyway, it's always funny to see how I've California'd a little bit, but that's what we always like to do.
I love that. I have my grandma's in LA and some other family. My grandma's, I guess my aunt's, her sister's family. And then my uncle and his son live in Portland. So I have some love for those two parts of the world as well. Yeah. And I also played baseball.
There you go. Okay.
So no control today, right, Matt?
Well, we usually geek out on controls. There's a couple things happening right now. One is that we're running out of CIS controls, although we have a couple more scheduled. So we are going to be transitioning into NIST's new CSF 2.0 in January. As much as we can get excited about new security standards, I'm excited about this one.
I'm actually a little bit excited about it.
But the other thing is, I think we wanted to really create a platform and space to talk about this journey that Brian's been on, which is really like he's going to be recounting his story, but the reality is this is the story of anyone who decides to start a venture, starts a business, right? And I think that many of our listeners, for today, for the holiday season, let's take off our technology cap and remember that we are first and foremost sales and marketing experts, and if we're not, we should be trying, right? So that's build a business.
Sweet.
All right.
I'll take all that bonus time. I'll take it all. And if we have any time left, Zach will teach us all how to roast a Christmas goose.
It's true. I've got 3 or 4 in the back and ready to go.
So we're gonna start with a. Are we gonna do like a tiny little intro to theory, Brian? Is that what's happening?
Yeah. Let me talk about our ethereal hook for the because you guys asked me what I want to talk about in for this webinar. The spirit of the first follower. I want to talk a little bit about the first follower principle, and then I thought maybe I would just tell a little bit of the story of sort of the lens of growing the Feel-Good MSP through this particular context, and then I've got we can break down a little bit more probably after that, but yeah, the first follower is not a concept I invented by any means. There's this really great, really old, super lo-fi YouTube video that somebody made for like a business course that I've watched like 100 times in my life, and I should have linked it. Maybe I'll find the link for you guys.
Luckily, we're in this young pre-record world, we did link it.
Brian linked it. It's in the show description.
It's in the show notes. So what am I thinking? It'll be in the show notes. Yeah, there's this great YouTube video where somebody breaks down the concept through this great illustration of they're at like a music festival, and there's one guy, like shirtless dude in like ripped up corduroy pants dancing in a field, and all these other people are just sitting there. And then it eventually turns into a dance party, but he uses the stages of that video to illustrate the concept of the first follower. I watched that, I don't know, years and years and years and years ago. And I kind of became obsessed with this concept because, as you said, Matt, like we all need to remember that we're sales and marketing experts, maybe even before we're technologists, right? But I would even say, I think you could even say that you are a leader before you're an IT professional, if you're running an IT business. And really, this is the concept of how leadership skills can translate to growing a business, because we're not just growing a stable of customers, but you are building a movement, right? You started your IT business because let me say it this way. Statistically, many of our viewers started their IT business because they worked at another IT business or maybe multiple and said, the way everybody does this is wrong. It should be done like this. Right? And then there she goes, and she sets out on her own venture and goes, I'm just going to do it right. I'm just going to do it the way that nobody else is seeing it. I'm seeing it. And that's the American dream right there. That's why so many of us started our venture, because we felt this strong pull towards kind of telling our own story and leading our own charge, which means you are a leader. CEOs or founders, you're a leader. So you're not just leading your team, you're also leading your customers. But the way you lead your customers, the way you lead your team are very different. So the concept of first follower is, if you want to, John Maxwell always says a leader without any followers is just somebody out on a walk, right? You have to get people to follow the vision. What is Fort Mesa doing that's so disruptive and unique and you guys had a compelling message. That's where we met early on, Matt, a couple years ago.
Yeah, I mean that was my journey, right? It wasn't happening in this market segment, the way it needed to happen, and put our flag up the pole, right? Like we're gonna make it happen.
You guys, we connected via LinkedIn, and you were the first person who I ever heard actually explain to me how somebody could turn Slack hours into huge billable hours, or could, as a service, their Slack hours in a way to make people actually compliant and actually put their money where their mouth is. It's like, holy crap, this is amazing. So then I got you guys customers because I got it. I was one of your followers, if you will, right? So the concept of the first follower is you really need to focus on find the core people who can connect to the DNA of what you're doing. What is the simplest, most pure, childlike form of what you're trying to create with your company? There are people who will understand that. And it's almost no one, by the way. because it's another way of saying it's very 1 out of 100, 1 out of 1,000 people are really tuned to be first followers, early adopters. They want to be there before it's mainstream, right? Those people are who you want to start with. You don't start with last followers, late adopters. You start with early adopters. And then your job as a leader is now to nurture the first followers in a way where they will help you become the leader of a movement rather than a person with a good idea, right? You're basically synergizing the momentum of what you can do for them and then making it easier for late followers to jump on board.
And this is with different terminology, but this is the same story that you hear out of Silicon Valley, right? That's been created, all this digital disruption, right? You start with those early adopters, and then I think they use the terminology of crossing the chasm once you're ready to bring your followers, into the mainstream.
Right.
But this is how you create a new movement, right?
That's right. This is how you do it.
It's interesting. I was listening to a podcast recently, and they were talking about how new technology becomes mainstream, and they were equating it to the financial economics of it, less of the mind share, which we're going to talk about. But essentially, it was, the first big screen TVs were really expensive, but the people that were able to afford them, the first followers in that regard, were able to buy that at that cost, which drove the price down, which made other people able to get on board. My head jumped to that when you said the first followers makes it easier for the next followers to follow.
Right.
And that's another shot of that showing up in different spaces in the world. That's interesting.
So this is pretty
100%.
abstract. How do we make this less abstract?
Yeah, happy to. So I think I'll just make this pivot so that I make sure it's clear, because I know these MSP CEOs are already thinking about like, oh, what agent should I put in my stack that I'm getting them to adopt? I'm not talking about your product at all. I'm actually talking about the narrative, right? The value proposition that you give. I'll say it this way. The value that someone understands is the only tangible value, right?
Right.
In our industry, the value that they understand is the only tangible value. And MSP owners are famous for forgetting this, because we say, I've got the best stack in the world, but nobody buys my product. Like, yeah, maybe your city's saturated. Maybe you're just a douche, and so nobody wants to buy your product, right? It has nothing to do with your intrinsic, well, I'm a blah, 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 and I'm a Cisco certified. Nobody cares. What are you doing for them, right? That's the story, because you helping them is actually equipping them to go to the next chapter of their story, right? But sometimes we forget and we make these followers about us. So the principle, a final bullet, a final punctuation here is that the first follower is more important than the leader in a movement. The most important person in a movement is the first follower, not the leader, right? So I'll just tell my story a little bit. I think it's going to help explain some of what I mean. So when I started this is not the first business I started. The first business I started, I never organized, but my first business was in 5th grade.
I have
How old is 5th grade? Remind
for
me.
another day.
What is that, like 10, 8, 9? I was 9 or 10. And I started selling candy. It was awesome. So I didn't have articles. Okay. I didn't have a board, but I was slinging candy. I had it all figured out. Anyway, so I've started many businesses in my life, and I've built many more other businesses that weren't mine. Frankly, I've made a lot of people millionaires before I became a millionaire. And the first beginning of Feel-Good MSP for me was, I realized, okay, what is that? What is not out there that needs to be out there? My opinion and my perception of the channel was, when I was building my MSP, even though I had a great sales strategy, I wanted to pull in some like gasoline on the fire, but I was going out and I was not finding sales support that I personally could feel good about and put my name behind in the channel. I couldn't find it. Now that I'm not even really talking about prospecting as a service, which is another thing. That's not what I do. What Feel-Good MSP does is sales strategy, training, implementation, accountability, where you can create sales, revenue operations and revenue systems, and then insource them, and then do it in a way where the owner can do it until they need to put in a new salesperson, etc. I couldn't find that when I was an MSP. And the ones I could find, I personally didn't want my name associated with, because it felt like that like pre-Clinton era style of sales that was just like super aggressive, really fuddy. And even if you say it's not FUD, if you're still scaring people, it's still FUD, no matter what you call it.
It's like that type of sales, Brian, to me, it's almost like manipulation through words. It's like chess with your words. And the other person's like, okay, you won the sale, but I hate you, you know?
Exactly. Chess is a perfect way to, like, a lot of people will relate it to game theory, but game theory is not, I think it's super reductive of what game theory is, but it's what I call the adversarial sales complex. This is what I'm talking about in Rejection Con next week. I mean, what I talked about 2 weeks ago in Rejection Con.
I love it. No, it's hilarious. Keep going. That's awesome.
It's the adversarial sales complex is the core belief that we're competing with our customer, and that one of us has to lose in order for a sale to transact, right? It doesn't make sense. So that's the sort of genesis of Feel-Good MSP. I'm like, can I show people that this is just fundamentally stupid, and that there is a way better way out there? So my first year is what I call finding and grinding. Like, I had Sales Navigator, and I made lists of MSPs, and then I picked up my phone and I called them. This is the simplest version of how you start any business, right? Listen to any Mark Cuban story. He always started like that.
When you started your candy business, were you door to door on the first slugs?
I was desk to desk in fifth grade.
Oh,
so a lot of people don't answer the phone these days, Brian, but I know that sometimes when when that email goes into a black hole, I know I pick up the phone and people answer, right? So
yes.
Where are you getting these phone numbers? Like, you just like,
here's how I did it. Google Sheet on one desktop, Sales Nav on the other desktop. I'd pull up their website from their LinkedIn. I'd go to the website and look at their toll-free number. I would copy and paste it into my spreadsheet. I have a lead. I'd call them. That was it. You want to hear what I said? I said, hey, my name's Brian. How you been? Fine. Listen, you don't know me. I'm calling you out of the blue, but I'm calling to invite you to a virtual event I'm running for MSPs next week. If you give me 30 seconds, I'll tell you what it is, how much it costs, what you get out of it. And if you're not interested, at the end of that, we can hang up.
So that personal approach that you're talking about, right, in that outbound call,
yeah,
they still work, right? And it's way different than those blind calls that most of us get all day, right?
Right.
I mean, what at least they're dealing with a human.
Yeah. And
authenticity.
I didn't have a script. I wasn't reading off anything. In fact, one of the things I oftentimes do is leave my iPhone on speaker on my desk on purpose, so it doesn't sound too clean. So it sounds like a person. I've made cold calls. I'm not kidding. I've made cold calls while driving on purpose. I use my Bluetooth, everybody. I'm not a crazy person, but it's like, hey, this is so-and-so, and you hear my blinker on, and they're like, what the hell?
He's working hard, man.
I'm in the middle of something. I also used to use I only have a minute. This is my Q4 hack. I'm such a rabbit chaser right now, but my Q4 hack is on a cold call. When you call them and go, yeah, how you been, blah, blah, blah. Listen, I only have a minute, but I was going to just run this thing by you. And you get ahead of them telling you how busy you are.
I like that. That's funny. I'm definitely not going to steal that.
Well, but that's the reality, because you have to make a bunch of these calls, right? I mean, this is
right.
You're not gonna call one person to get your first follower, right?
And it's also true. Another time, and I go, okay, this was sort of my slot. So is there a specific time that I can try to hit you for? And then you just get them to schedule it instead of just making them feel like they are entitled to you just sitting around like a puppy dog waiting for them to be free. Anyway, yeah, cold calls is how I started. And 1 in 8 people I put on that spreadsheet would come to that workshop. Just so you know, 1 in 8. Now, it was usually about the third or fourth dial to get them. And what's sad is you with a small MSP, you hit 2 for sales and you get the owner. But most of the time, I would my theory was being proven. You hit 2 for sales and it's like, thank you for calling Super Tech, where we love people. Leave a voicemail. And what I wanted to say was, imagine if I was a sale right now.
Yeah.
Leaving a voicemail in your dumb, weird robot voice.
You almost maybe could have said that. Imagine if I was you, like you probably not have 0% success rate on that strategy.
I know, right? But the truth is, a lot of the smaller MSPs are so jaded. The sales calls are all vendors. It's like Cinex again, trying to get you to buy stuff. Whoever, sorry, I shouldn't have called that a vendor, but
oops, you did.
Or
Somebody
insert any vendor here, right?
Insert any vendor here, including me, right? I'm a vendor selling on their sales line. So anyway, so I would call them, I'd invite them to this workshop. And I was inviting them to workshops because I wanted to prove myself to them. I'm willing to sing for my supper for a new customer. Like, I'm going to help you a bunch before you do anything for me. And that doesn't make me sad. That's my job. Right?
So you got people into these workshops or workshop. The first workshop, second workshop. I think you've done these more than once now, right?
Yeah. I've run like 20 of them now.
So how did you find your followers? Like that they're, not everyone's gonna follow you after a workshop, right?
Sure. So they go through the workshop, and I'm not just looking for people who buy, but I'm looking for people who get it. So I would start the workshop with my most polarizing opinions by design. So you can build a workshop specifically to filter out the psychographics of the audience. And I'd lose somebody on day one, but that was the point, is get the people who don't get it to leave.
Right. Don't waste your time.
Yeah, and so I'm a waste of their time.
I want to ask you a question, because we're talking about this. The three of us all have been in business and understand the importance of relationship management and people and understanding that. Talk about why you want to filter out people. You might have people that are watching this that are saying, well, Brian, you filtered out some of your first 5 followers. Why would you do that?
That's
go through that.
That's a really important question. So it's all about keeping the end in mind. I'm trying to build a movement. What is moving and where's it going? These are the questions you should know the answers to before you go out and start trying to whip people into a frenzy to follow you around. Because otherwise, all of a sudden, it looks like an anarchist rally if you just get a bunch of people together and they all have a different version of what's going to be happening there, right? But what binds people together is a common goal, not even common interests, not even commonalities, but people who want the same thing or who are going the same direction. You see what I mean? But if we're all going different directions, we just look like Union Station. But if we're all walking the same direction, we look like a movement, right? So I need to know they're going where I'm going, or they want to go where I'm going. And if they don't want to go where I'm going, they can't be one of my first followers, right? My first disciples, if I can say it that way. Like, get these people who understand the core DNA of what I'm trying to do. So the wrong fits. What's funny is a lot of them come back and buy from you later because they're not first followers. They're late followers.
Or second, or I don't know.
Second or third, right? They need a bunch of social proof. Fine, give that to them, but we'll get into that later. They don't want a guy with no testimonials. They don't want a guy whose first event was on Eventbrite. They don't want that. I should say, by the way, this, I don't think I've ever shared this publicly, but my first workshop I ran was a major flop, and it was not for managed services. So I came back to the MSP industry after a year of consulting, doing some other stuff with other businesses. And I was debating, like, man, I love MSPs, but like I was trying some things out after I had quit my job as a VP of sales. So I ran another one, and I was targeting female-owned professional services businesses. And I ran a workshop that I won't get into now. I promoted it on Facebook. I had some ads. I made some videos, and it was free. I think that one was free. And I had like 5 people show up, and I made an offering out of some of the courses I had already recorded and stuff. And I made $0 on it. And it was like a month of like calling everybody I know. I mean, it was a pretty public effort, right? Made no money. So then I was like, okay, I learned a lot from that. I recorded 2 ads. I was staying in an Airbnb for the summer, recording ads on this random Airbnb couch, put them on LinkedIn, paying $14 a click. I had like a $300 budget. It was gone in like 2 days, and cold calling. And so I made my second one called the $1 Million MSP Challenge. That's what I called it. And I ran it in July of 2021. 6 people registered. I charged money for it too, $27 or $67 for a VIP ticket. And you got an extra hour with me, which meant for $67, it was 5 days, 2 hours a day. You got 10 hours of training from me for $67. Just to be clear, I'm a $500 an hour consultant, right? So I couldn't really be giving this away for anything less. But I gave it, that's what I did. 6 registrations, 5 people showed up. 3 of them bought my program, and I made $10,000 in 4 days of the event. I sold from the event. I sold one-to-many presentation. And that was the genesis of what then went on to become a much more expensive and much more comprehensive offering later. But it was very clear what you're getting. And a lot of the narrative of the pitch was even built around the people in that room. What do these people want?
So back up a second. So you did this twice, right? The first time it didn't work, or you didn't continue, and the second time it did. Did you just get better? Was this a different ICP?
It's a different
Customer
ICP.
profile?
Different.
Yeah.
The only thing that changed was I went from trying to do female-owned professional B2B professional services to MSPs in California. That was the difference the second time. I want MSP owners in California. This is what I can help you do. So I just got way more specific.
Yeah, I know. I think a lot of our viewers, they're living this adventure right now, trying to figure out, how do I find my customers, right? And I think the first time is to find the first thing they need to do is define what customers they're looking for, right? And if they're not showing up, maybe they're looking for the wrong customer.
Or you're looking for every customer,
right?
Like, who can you help? This is the question. Who do you have hands-on experience improving the quality of their life? Is it doctors or lawyers? If it's doctors, but you hate doctors, like, look, you've got the experience. Go to therapy and get over your doctor issue, and then sell to doctors. Because you can't just decide that you're valuable for somebody who you're not. So I would say, who do you actually have experience helping, right? And so for me, it was MSPs. I grew my MSP very successfully. So to be completely honest, when I left my MSP, I was like, I don't know if I ever want to go back. That was a couple of months, when you quit, when you leave a job. It's like, I don't know if I want to go back to the channel. But then I got over that. I dealt with my crap, my frustrations that I projected on the whole industry because they were my issue. I got over it, and now I can't imagine not being in the channel now. But yeah, I got more specific. But I just wanted to share that story that I feel like a lot of times, especially like sales, people like me who talk about sales all the time, you don't always hear us say all the stuff that didn't work. But a lot of it doesn't work.
We tried a lot of stuff that didn't work. We still try stuff that doesn't work, right? We're always trying to figure out what works
Right.
better.
I'm still trying stuff too. I'm constantly changing and growing, and all you can do is make your best product today. You can't make the best product in the world. You're not good enough to make the best product in the world. But you don't have to make the best product in the world. That's a sour pill to swallow, but once you realize that, you'll be okay.
I think I want to just tack on to that sour pill, though. I don't know if it's a sour. It feels sour because everybody wants to be that special. We all want to be special, right? Wouldn't it be great if we all had the opportunity to be special? But the reality is, even those of us who are seen as special did not do it by themselves. You've got Steve Jobs, right? Like he's regarded very highly, but he had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people helping make the vision come true. He didn't do it all himself.
Oh, he was
Right.
a vision salesperson. That was his unique skill, right? He didn't actually do anything.
He had a unique skill that happened to put him in the forefront, but the reality is we're a community-based people.
Yeah.
We got this far because we got together and we said, "Hey, let's stop trying to kill each other and let's work together." And
Yeah.
the people that, the organizations that are the best ones are the ones that understand that the best. Anyway, keep going, Brad.
I would even double down on that and say Steve Jobs was an amazing leader
Right.
who was great at making followers, almost cult-like followers. Right? They were Apple has always been good at that. That's why you can buy an iPhone which objectively has inferior technology to the Samsung Galaxy of the year before. And if you have a green text message, everybody wants to murder you. Right?
Did you see that they did away with that?
Did they?
Or in the process of doing away with it? And it's funny because I saw an article from Apple being like, "Hey, you know what? Everybody can have blue now." And then like
Well,
2 weeks
it's
later, 2 weeks later, I saw an article that was like Android now able to cover it or like fix it.
yeah.
So
No,
like Apple got out with the marketing before
they're losing
before
their battle in the EU. It's they gave up in the EU. So like the EU is like you can't do that, and they were like they fought it for a while, but like
What's the? We'll talk about it later. I'm kind of curious what the
well,
ground.
okay. So you did this workshop, it didn't work. You did another workshop, it worked.
Yeah.
It's because you targeted different. But how did you get a bunch of people to show up? Same thing, cold call, like
Cold call.
Cold
That's
call.
it. I cold call people. And I mean, the second guy I talked to who showed up said, "Thank you so much for calling me." Because I offered him something he wanted. Now, if you cold call well, they will thank you for calling them.
Yeah.
I did a whole episode on Paul Green about this, on Paul Green's podcast. So after you've got that, like the first workshop, I had 3 people. So now I have 3 people who are hanging on my every word, and I've got 0 margin for error when I'm this immature, right? So my next step was serve. Serve these people like it's my job, because it is. If you've got 5 customers right now, it's crazy how often this happens. We end up in this position where we wanted to be somewhere else, or we had an expectation of where our business would be, or margins are really razor thin and we're struggling. So maybe in MSP, if you're listening, you've got 10 or less customers, and you are feeling yourself, if you're honest and think about it, you might feel resentment towards your customers. This is super common. Almost every company I know.
Yeah, if they're unprofitable or they're taking up all your time or whatever.
Yeah, right. And the truth is, I could go into why it's probably if people never honor your boundaries, it's probably because you don't set good boundaries, right? Like it's probably you probably have at least 50% of the fault in almost every conflict in your life, right? But that's not what I'm talking about here. It's like you need a chiropractic adjustment to the way you're perceiving your first followers. These people are your disciples. They are going to make you a leader if you position them to be first followers. If you actually make it your job to take care of those people, they will in turn take care of you, trust me. Because first followers attract second followers. Right? Like how many people are willing to go for a company who has 0 testimonials, 0 reviews?
So you actually said something. You said you're the person who's a first follower isn't looking for the Eventbrite situation, or I can't remember exactly.
They're fine with it being.
They are fine, but the
lo-fi.
second follower isn't. They're not looking. Most
Right.
people aren't.
They want proof, and they want badges on your wall, and because they don't know how to buy and they're not confident being first followers.
They may be. So I wrote something down. I wanted to come back to. We transitioned into a great conversation related to that, but I wanted to bring it back to what I believe is why those second, third, fourth, fifth followers aren't first followers. And it's, I think, because they're highly risk averse, or in a situation where they have to be more risk averse, whether
Sure.
it's their budget is such that they have to make sure that the training they spend on is going to yield, or whether it's
Right.
the time or the social aspect where they don't want to be, oh, I don't want to be seen this way. There's a bunch of different reasons, but it all comes back to risk of being judged, risk of losing money, risk of
Yeah.
wasting time. It's all fear and risk. And those first followers are ready to jump off the cliff with you.
Yeah. They've got a second follower doesn't necessarily mean it's a less mature buyer. In many cases, the buyers you want are the ones who can't join you until you're proven. You're not going to get a publicly traded company if you have no social proof, right? Because that CEO could lose their job if you fail them, right? So it would be immature. It would be unwise of them to be a first follower to your little venture. But how many times do we go after when we start? We go, I want to start an MSP. Maybe I'll just try to call like Carnival Cruise Lines and I'll do all their technology. Like, no, you won't. You won't. Or maybe I'll just get a 400-seat whale. No, you won't. A good 400-seat company is not going to hire you. You don't have a following yet. That would be stupid of them, right? If they did hire you, that would, to me, that'd be a little bit concerning, unless, of course, you had a pre-existing relationship. And we'll get a comment from the one lady here who started with a 400-seater, and vaya con Dios, I believe in you. But I'm just saying,
home run hitter, Barry Bonds it up.
Yeah, the more mature, the more evolved buyers you want are the ones who need a movement in order to jump on board. So your job is not to try to get fifth followers. It's get first followers and then keep them as followers, which means serve your ass off. Make their life as good as you can. I made myself available as much as I could to my first 5 customers. I sent them encouraging texts periodically. Hey, Oleg, I want you to know you're killing it this week. No ulterior motive other than for him to succeed, because I knew early on, I can't afford to sell a sales training program that doesn't make people money. You can't afford to sell a managed service stack that doesn't make people's life easier and decrease their chance of getting a cyber event. You can't afford it, right? No matter how well your lawyer protects you on the documentation, your reputation cannot afford for you to be a bad vendor for them. So you've got to be amazing. And that's your job. Your job is to pour yourself out for these people, but you want to do so in a way that creates opportunities for them to actually tell your story, which means give them a story worth telling, right?
So, I talk to a lot of MSPs that are in that pouring stage, Brian, and some of them feel like or are actually pouring down a bottomless pit, right? So how should they evaluate when that's going to come back and net rewards, and when it maybe isn't, because that's an important distinction, right? Like,
Yeah, for sure. That's great. I think there's three possible answers. The first one, though, I'll just throw away as a quick caveat that it could very well be a mindset issue that the MSP, it could be a toxic perception that the mindset's carrying, that's this like, no one ever appreciates me. If you have that core belief, then you think you're pouring things down, but very oftentimes the value you're giving is usually slighted anyway. So, but I'm gonna dismiss that and say you're doing genuine help for your customers. It could then become a mindset issue for your prospect, which could tell me that either they are not a good psychographic for you or they're not a good demographic for you. They're probably not the type of customer you want to reproduce, right? And now I understand that we have to start wherever we can start, especially if you quit your job to do this thing, you need the revenues. You're going to need a customer that's not a perfect fit. I bat about 500 on having a perfect customer that comes in. About half of my customers are right where I want them in demographic, psychographic, and use case. But about half of them have at least one of those 3 pillars of my ICP. And that's fine. And one day I'll turn those people away.
That's an excellent rate, actually, because I think a lot of people get saddled with customers that none of them are their ICP. They don't even know what their ICP is because they've brought in a random collection of customers that collectively don't have any reproducible traits. Like they might have 20 customers, and if they look at them and said, which customer would I want 10 more of, they can't find one, right?
That's exactly right. So if you're early doors and you're pouring all this value down these bottomless holes and nothing's coming back and your customers are ungrateful, the problem is You should always assume the problem is your fault because that's the only way you can take any action to correct it. You should always assume it's your fault in life. Just assume some measure of responsibility.
Because if it's not, you can't control that. And if you can control, the only things you can control are pieces that could be your fault. That's the only way to look at it.
So if you're in this like, well, you don't get it, Brian. My city is saturated. IT isn't what it used to be. People are cheap. This is toxic trash you need to stop saying. Yeah. I need you to do me a favor to every listener. Remove this excuse from your entire lexicon. My city is saturated. I mean this with all the Christmas love in the world. Stop saying that. Because it would be tragic if you had an excuse that was so valid, you never grew as a business or as a person. That would be tragic, wouldn't it? So give it up. I almost said the F word. Just give it up.
You're allowed. We allow that on here.
Okay.
We don't have to worry about the FCC here.
That's right. Okay. The reason that you're pouring value down a bottomless pit is because of this. You didn't have a definition of success going into this engagement. Matt, to answer your question, this was what I should have said 5 minutes ago. When you start with a customer, you want to start with a super clear value proposition. I'm going to help you go from this to this and make it tangible, right? Not create efficiency, synergy. That's all nice stuff for the website. But if it's ill-defined or if it's not definable, your customer will have no way of knowing when they crossed that chasm, when you actually help them through their transformation, because they don't know what they're trying to transform into. So tell them, I'm going to go from this to this. My value was within 6 months, you'll be doing a net new logo a month. That's what I give you. So you should be in 18 months, you should have a minimum of 12 logos when you've met me. Minimum. That's what I help you do. New MRR every month, guaranteed. Right? So now we know if I either did it or I didn't do it. And that's what's scary to people is they go, well, I don't want to make these promises. Well, that's why nobody believes you, because you never make any statements. They don't know what the hell you're talking about.
If you're not willing to make a promise, so there says something about that, right? Like, Brian, if you said to me, can you meet me here at this time? And I'm like, well, I don't know. You're like, this guy's not going to meet me there, right? He's not going to show up. And if I feel inside like I can't say, yeah, I'll meet you there, then there's some part inside of me that questions whether or not I think I can meet you there.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And
it's only a matter of time before I stop going to lunch with you, because I go, he'll never commit to being there or not being there.
He can't meet me there.
Yes.
So a lot of MSPs are focused on the stack, right? Selling this stack of value, right? Products and services together that the customer consumes and they're better off for it, right? But I think what you're saying is having a better stack isn't enough. Like, the stack needs to achieve something, right? Like, it needs to actually fulfill a business goal for the customer that's specific, so that you know when you've achieved it, right?
Right. Exactly right. You're a general contractor. Your stack is your hammer, is your tool belt. You don't tell people, you don't sell houses by showing them your tool belt. Say, look how great my hammer is. Do you see?
We're gonna make some comedy sketches.
I have the best hammer.
That is.
And they're
funny.
like, I don't care. Why are you showing me this? And you go, because this is look how valuable.
The wall, baby. Look at this thing.
Look at this. Look at this drill. No, you show them what you're going to build using your tools, and you say, imagine you and your family having breakfast in this nook. You're not talking about where you source the crown molding from and all that stuff. Nobody cares, dude. Talk about it through their lens. So your value can't just be like, we'll have blank and blank and blank and you'll have whatever. Like, talk about what their life is like when you've done your job. That's value. Okay. I call it the so what rule. You can look at any value proposition on your website, and then underneath it, go to a whiteboard and write that value, and then write the words, so what? And then fill your whiteboard with why that value matters. And then guess what? Everything you wrote down there, that's what you need to just Mad Libs in. That's the real value for them. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
That's how you do it. So even compliance. Okay, you're HIPAA compliant. Did you guys just see that article? Somebody just got slapped with like a $400,000 fine.
There's a lot more enforcement going on the last few years, but yeah,
About time. Anyway, I'm all over the rails. So serve. That's what I was all about at the beginning. How do I make these people successful, and how do I, without setting any dangerous, like unscalable precedents in terms of like my product, what do I do? So there was many times when I wanted to go above and beyond, and so I could do so in a way letting them know not to become entitled to a certain access to me, right? There is a way of doing that. A lot of times customers or MSPs are going to be hearing me going, no, Brian, because I already do this. They text me at 3 a.m. and I answer every time, but you're embittered about it because there's a difference between going above and beyond and having no boundaries. You know what I mean? Like, you can do so in a way where they actually still feel grateful for the focus because you went, yeah, this is not normally something that I can sustain, but I understand how important this is. And I happen to have a free spot because something just canceled. Let me call you back in 15 minutes and let's just bang this thing out. Right? If you just learn how to communicate, that will reframe the way they perceive the value, where they won't feel entitled and you won't feel overrun and bitter.
Well, I want to just people. So I grew up in the restaurant industry, so I've dealt a lot with folks that are focused immediately on what they're focused on because they're having to move quick. I mean, imagine a waitress or a waiter, right? I got to get to where the food is and get the food where the food's got to go. Like, that's what they have to accomplish. And they're dodging people and they're singularly focused. If you, as a seller or a manager for that matter, come into a situation and you're not considering what that other person is thinking about or focused on, when you then go to try to communicate with them what you want them to do, need them to do, or why they might do something else, if you don't have that frame of what's happening in there, you might be speaking another language to them in regards to what you want to accomplish. And then that can create for some uncomfortable interactions as well. So taking that patience of who am I dealing with and what do they understand or where are they coming from is really important from the sales and management perspective, in my opinion.
So back to your story, Brian, you found your ICP, I think. You pretty quickly, right? Because you tried something and it didn't work. You tried something like significantly different, right? You found your ICP, you created value for these people, and then you doubled down, right? You tripled down, right? Like really create that value now that you knew where it was, right?
Right. Now that I know, where are these people? And of course, I did create an ICP, which is a living document for me. Like I add to it almost weekly to the psychographics. Every time somebody I'm on a sales call with says something that I've never heard before, I write it down. And those are usually my best LinkedIn posts. It's like a direct quote from an actual customer, because who knows your customer better than them, So test. You sort of like, once I know who am I targeting, who am I helping, how am I helping them, and then I did some split testing, of course, along the way. This wasn't magic. Like, okay, what sort of workshop topics do people want? I did some on break fix conversion, which I was like, I thought that was going to be super valuable, but it's so hard that nobody wanted to learn how to do it. Everybody wants a pill. So then I did one on lead gen called lead gen transformation. Lead gen transformation was interesting. Tons of people showed up, but nobody wanted to actually do the next step because everybody was looking for a silver bullet, but nobody wanted to, like, in that particular round of workshops, nobody wanted to like drop roots, try, put their back into it and build a system. They just wanted me to give them leads. So they were not the right fit for me. So, what I do now, if you look at my website, my workshops, every word is really meticulously thought through because of this is how you build a business. This is what every MSP should be doing. The offering continued to mature, of course. So like, here's a sobering truth, right? Like, your offering is not as good as it's going to be in 5 years. Hopefully. If things go well, it is not as right now. If things are going well, You are currently selling the worst version of your product you'll ever sell. Agreed?
I mean, that presumes that someone is going to continually test and riff, right? But there are lifestyle MSP owners out there that haven't changed a thing in years, and guess what happens, right?
Yeah, nobody buys from you, and this is why, because you think you can sell them a stack. It's just not compelling enough, right? So no, it's not that the market's changed; it's that you haven't changed. That's the problem.
See, split testing for you looked like a different workshop, right? Or maybe a different intervention. For an MSP, what would this look like? Is this like different bundles, different pricing and packaging, different value messaging? What is
I
that?
actually wouldn't even think that. I think that you know what they need, right? Like I didn't change the way I teach sales because people didn't get it. You know what I mean? Like, or I'll say that another way. My sales philosophy isn't going to change just because I showed it to somebody who didn't want to buy it. My sales philosophy is a 15 years long sort of.
It's who you are. It's a part of you.
It's a part of me, and it was forged in the crucible of failure. Like it's stronger than all of us. You know technologically what they need. What you don't know how to do is explain it to them in a way that they'll care about. So your split testing should really be on the narrative. It shouldn't be on the stack. Build the right stack, but maybe you don't need to go agent by agent in your sales presentation. Maybe that's your problem. Maybe you need to play the so what game. Right?
That's a really important point. I mean, I don't know how many MSPs I've seen. They're starting out, and the first thing they do is they make a pricing grid, and what goes on that pricing grid are all their agents and their stacks. And they're like, oh, here's the 5 different plans. And they get these agents or those agents and those agents, and then they go out to the customers, and no one wants to buy anything.
Imagine if, think about it this way. Imagine you went to a restaurant, and their menu was a grid. And column A, row 1 was cilantro, and everything that had cilantro in it had a check mark. And then there was pricing points based off of the tiers of the food you got, and you had and then extra for it to be flame broiled. There's a $2 upcharge per ounce.
Per ounce,
right? But that's how we're explaining.
Yeah.
Instead of saying,
look at this
one little sentence, mouth-watering paragraph that says, wow, experience the life-giving fusion of Thai and Caribbean in one explosive experience. Hell yeah.
It's worth noting it depends on your ICP, right? Because as an MSP, there are customers out there because they're informed buyers and they have an IT department, right?
Sure.
And they're used to like digging into data sheets and like they actually want to see it that way, right? But that's far and few, right. I would say, right?
But I would also say that that's going to be your supplementary material. That's going to be to helping them rationalize post-emotional decision, right? Because we want them to emotionally buy the product and then rationally buy the product. So you don't start with rationale and then try to build emotion later. It doesn't work that way. That's not how the human brain works. So I would agree with you. I think the point is, though, that even that person, I'll say it this way, even the most analytical person has something that they want out of this exchange, right? And the thing that they want, I should be able to articulate in a sentence. I should be able to say, I help you achieve goal and avoid constraint and get away from pain. And maybe their goal is having the most objectively valuable MSP partnership. And so I could say, I can make sure that on paper, we are the best MSP option for you. And I can make sure that you avoid getting into those sort of flatline partnerships with people who don't know where you're trying to go. And here's how we do it. Insert graph.
Yeah. So even in those situations where you're dealing with a technical buyer, right, that knows every little bit that you're selling, right?
Yeah.
You don't need to act like a catalog, because if they wanted to buy from a catalog, like they could go to CDW, right?
That's right.
You're not gonna beat a big distributor on price who's got more pricing leverage than you. You need to come up with that unique value that you can provide that person, right?
Yeah. Right. And this is the part you can't shortcut. This is why I want to talk about first followers. If you're building your business like you're building a movement, you have to know what your followers want. Why are they following you? Where are they going? What do they want? These are things that you've got to know before anybody will follow you. So you should be asking yourself things like, what does my customer want out of an MSP? If you've never asked a prospect or a customer, what do you want out of this relationship? Then it's no wonder that you keep saying things that no one cares about, right? Ask them what they want. And then whatever they say, write it down. And then ask yourself, is this makes sense? Is this something I can scale and sort of send out? So a lot of the verbiage I use didn't come from me. That's what makes a great copywriter, is a copywriter who knows who their reader is. So my best copy is verbatim pulled from some of my prospects or customers. See what I mean?
So someone finds their ICP, they make them really happy, they make that first follower really happy. Then how do they capture? I know we have some early first followers that they are happy to sit down in front of a group of their peers and say, this company has changed the way we do business, and all 10 of those peers will listen and hear from it. And I think those are those moments that you're really hoping for with the first followers. So how do you capture that? How do you turn that into growth?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, so I think the nature of a first follower is that they are also evangelists. Like by design, the people who want to come early are the people who want, because they want credit for being first followers. They're the people who want to find a new hipster band before their friends do. And so when they want to find it, then they want to tell everybody about it so they can get credit for it. So that's why this works, is if you have a super clear starting point, into like intervention model or results mechanism and end point, then you just sort of, I think, wait for those natural opportunities for them to tell the story to arise. And you're going to get word of mouth that way. But then, of course, if you like, I've got so many testimonials. feelgoodmsp.com/testimonials is just videos of people talking. At the beginning, I never pay anybody for testimonials because I think it's super unethical. I never mandate testimonials as a part of a discount. I think it's really unethical. Yeah. I just say, hey, I've really poured myself out to help you out, and I'm wondering if I can ask you a favor. Can I talk to you for 2 minutes on this video? And all you got to do is tell the honest version of what we just did. And I don't think I've ever had somebody say, I'm not willing to do that.
I've seen some of those. They are really enthusiastic. The people who've turned it, who've ended up creating those videos for you. I've seen. It's very clear that they believe everything they're saying.
Right? Yeah. Thank you. I mean, I have one. It was like a 6 or 7 minute interview, and it was so popular. And we did another one with him a year later. We just re-recorded it, and he's killing it, man. Oh my gosh, he's so killing it. And everybody loved his first videos, and it was Fred. So I made a second video. Like, okay, Fred, what's happening now? And I've got screenshots of text messages and screenshots of emails. Because I'm focused. What is my job? My job is to make MSPs money. Now, am I the one that picks up the phone? No. This is the beautiful part. I can't do the work for them.
Well, because then you wouldn't be sustainably making them money.
That's right. And I couldn't promise that I could ever do it again. Right. But I am helping people instill their own sense of confidence, their own process. They're making themselves money. And that's very important to me. I always tell them, like, you're the one who made that close. I didn't get on the phone and close it for you. You closed that deal. And then they, of course, say, but you taught me how to close that deal. And I say, oh, thanks. Yeah, that's true. Great. Right. So now I have really meaningful social proof because I made a bunch of people a lot of money. I mean, I could monologue right now with how much MRR we've closed, but we average 1.2 net new logos in 90 days in 2023.
Woo.
That's
1.2?
awesome. 1.2 net new logos.
Which is better than one,
yes.
Right?
Most MSPs are doing 2 to 5 a year if they're lucky, but a lot of $2 million MSPs are doing 3 customers a year because the phone rang.
Right. Well, people need the services. I mean, that's why.
Yeah.
That's why the industry is projected to grow. I mean,
I had 2 MSPs this year close over 20,000 in MRR in 90 days. So there you go.
So, if people are really value oriented, it makes the messaging easier. It makes those first followers more likely to turn into mouthpieces, right?
Yes.
And then what? I mean, do you treat second followers, third followers differently, or is it more?
Yes and no. It's a great question. The method to reach them is very similar, but I think that the message can change. So now the message at the beginning was, hey, let me prove this thing to you. You want to show up and let's try this thing together. The message now is, hey, I'd like to tell you how I make MSPs 1.2 net new logos in 90 days. Because now my value is not abstract. Now my value can be a little bit more tangible so the message itself can change, because as I said, the average person wants, that's why it's like, go to dropbox.com or any of it, and they're like, 200,000 companies use us. And then you go, okay, I'm not going to question what cloud they're in or if they're secure now because I'm a sheep and I want to be where all the sheep are. You know what I mean? Now, that's a sort of human nature, is the social proof to us is a really important thing. So now I've got social proof. Of course, the social proof is now going to be the vehicle for my value.
Here's another piece to that to kind of soften it. The sheep are where it's safe.
Exactly.
That's okay. It's okay to want to be where it's safe. That's totally fine.
That's right. Because there's a shepherd that's keeping all the wolves away. Like, all right, Dropbox is going to make sure I don't lose any data. I'm just making up a random company we all know, right? Insert whatever. They're going to make sure that we can achieve what we want to achieve, and then we can focus on ourselves, and that's the whole point. But there's super, super clear value there. So the medium doesn't change. Like, I don't cold call anymore because I don't have time, but I honestly, if I wasn't a CEO, I would totally still cold call. I would do the same thing that I did at the beginning, but now I have content and people come to me, but I'm hiring an account executive next year. This is exactly what they're going to do. They're going to do exactly that. Invite people to workshops, invite people to webinars, whatever, ask people if they want a free ebook or sing for our supper a little bit, but it's usually going to be around the proof that we've been able to get from our first followers. And that, in my mind, is the beauty of having first followers who succeed, is now I've got built-in proof that can add legitimacy to the brand and help you be agile and contrarian and disruptive even early on. You don't need 25 years experience. You know what I mean?
So it sounds like it's really important to capture that the impressions of those first followers, right?
It's everything.
Yeah.
It's everything. So if you've got 10 customers right now and you're going, oh man, these people are a pain in a thorn in my side, I just whatever. I would consider asking yourself, or consider adjusting your perspective. These people might be the disciples that immortalize you if you can actually help them. So ask yourself, what do they need? How can I give it to them? Can we agree on super clear terms of what success is in this relationship? And that way, nobody gets to tell me I didn't do it. Right? And nobody gets to say I didn't do it well enough, because it's objective.
Well, Brian, I always love hearing people's business stories. It's inspiring for me. I always hear, oh yeah, I did that too, and oh yeah, I forgot that there's always these moments in a story like that where I realize, oh, I could have done that better.
Taking notes on the side.
This person had the same problem I had.
Yeah.
So thank you for coming in here and sharing.
Yeah,
absolutely,
for sure. Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Any last thoughts before we?
Yeah.
Well, you got to plug. You got to.
Oh, I should. What should I plug? Let's see. What day is it? It's the 22nd. Yeah. My plug is, if you are ready to get new customers, even if you don't know how you're going to have the time to do the work, even before, if you want a salesperson, but you don't know how to guarantee their success pre-hire, feelgoodmsp.com. You can book a sales assessment with me. We do a 10-minute interview where I ask you questions about your sales environment. In that 10-minute interview, you hear how much money I would need from you, how much time I would need from you, and all my cards are turned around. If we get to the end of that interview and it's clear we're not a good fit, you get 3 pieces of advice of what I would do next, and we part ways. Otherwise, you can hear about what's that?
A little free consulting is the worst case for 10 minutes.
That's right. And if not, you could join the movement of how selling can start to be a feel-good experience for you and for your prospects. And you never have to scare anybody again to charge whatever price you need to charge.
I like that. That was great.
I love that train. We're also I'm anti-FUD as well. So a lot of people use fear to sell compliance and security, and I think it's the wrong way.
Yeah. Sweet.
So I'll just do our quick plug. Fort Mesa helps service providers get their customers into right-sized cybersecurity plans. We help you on the sales workflows. We help you with the service delivery workflows, and of course, we help you prove it with documentation and evidence. Ring us out here, Zach.
All right. Thank you guys for joining us for our first ever pre-recorded show. Oh, actually, it's our second ever because we did that IT Nation. Well, I take it all back. Thank you guys for joining us. Happy holidays and Christmases and Hanukkahs to everybody. Next week, we're going to be celebrating New Year's with an MSP New Year's resolution for success call. We're going to have some MSPs joining us talking about what they're focused on for the coming years. We're going to talk about what we're focused on for the coming year. It'll be a great call. So make sure to join us next week. Thank you guys for coming in today and have a great one. Bye, everybody.